Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Well, this is Tom Dauber. I am here with Brianna Quinn. She is the Vice President of Development for Let's Get Ready. Well, welcome to the show, Brianna.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Goodness. Well, I've got a number of questions for you, and I know we've got limited time, but I would love to hear just a little bit about Let's Get Ready. Tell us about what you're doing there.
Yeah. So Let's Get Ready is the most prominent near-peer mentoring college access organization. And we have roughly 100 college coaches that mentor first generation and low income college students through both the access and the success. So we want, not only do we want first generation college students to enter college, but we want them to persist and graduate through college. And so we have mentors, near peer mentors that, can answer those questions that maybe a student wouldn't want to ask an adult.
That's really great. That's exciting. Well, now getting into this role took you some time, and you did it very publicly, if I recall correctly. And that's kind of why I wanted to have you on the show today. You were very brave. If our listeners don't know much about you, Brianna kind of journaled about her journey looking for a job on LinkedIn for the whole world to see. That was really, really cool. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to take such a transparent approach and how it affected your experience.
Yeah. So this job search, it started all the way back in September of 2023. So it has been I've actually been through 2 job searches in that time frame. And when I lost my job in September of 2023, I really didn't know what I was going to do because I'd always identified as a fundraiser. I had been in the field for 25 years. My job was my job. It was my life. And so I felt what am I going to do? I need to find my voice. I don't want to lose my voice. So I started just on LinkedIn, sharing my experience, sharing what I think about fundraising, what I think about the philanthropy sector at large. And then as I went along in the job search process, I realized, not to sound like an old lady, but this is not your mother's job search anymore. This is a totally different ball game. I can remember interviewing for a job over a week or 2 and getting the offer. Now it's not like that. And so there was one specific instance where I was a finalist for a role, and I received an email on Christmas Eve that it was a failed search on Christmas Eve. And I posted about it, and I was listen, here's what's happening in the job search. This is crazy. It's Christmas Eve, people. I was a finalist and they told me it was a failed search. This is awful. That post went viral. And that's when people started messaging me and being this is the same thing I'm experiencing. This is the same thing I'm experiencing. And I thought, you know what? I admit that I come from a place of privilege. I knew that I had the finances to cover me for a while. I knew I had family that would support me if things got really dire. And so I was I'm going to start posting about this more and just all the crazy things that happen. And through that, more and more people started messaging me and was please keep talking about this. This is what is happening. Please keep talking about it. And so I did. And then in April of 2024, I found a role that I thought was the dream job. I was super excited about it. Within 2 months of that role, I knew it was a big mistake and thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, that organization actually offered a buyout to every single person in the organization. I took it. I was one of the people that took it. And so I was only there for 6 months. And I thought, how in the heck am I going to share this on LinkedIn? I've been so transparent, so authentic, so vulnerable. I thought, well, here we go. This is part of the process. You think you have this perfect job and it's not. And so I got back on and started talking about it again in October of 2024 and was offered in January. So it wasn't too long of a break, and then started here in February. But it was quite the journey.
Brianna, obviously you weren't expecting on Christmas Eve to be told that you were part of a failed search as a finalist. What were some of the other most surprising things you learned about yourself as a fundraiser and dealing with employers during your job search?
Yeah, so I think for me, I really learned that I was going to have to lean into my values and that the transactional, historical way of fundraising was not how I viewed fundraising. And, I went to the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy and got my master's, but that was 25 years ago. And so, yes, they taught us fundraising, 101, but those things aren't necessarily relevant anymore. And so I really leaned into what am I looking for, that authenticity, that vulnerability, building relationships, and looked at values. And if a job description said, bring your portfolio of donors or raise 6 million in 6 months, I didn't even apply. I was like, I'm not going to put myself in a position where that's expected.
And that's some really helpful information for, especially for young fundraisers who are just maybe in their first or second search. There really are organizations out there that are thinking that they're going to hire, some type of rainmaker who's just going to bring a Rolodex full of names with them.
Yeah. And it's out there. And I think it's interesting because when I would see these organizations, I would kind of just pay attention to see who they hired. And there were people that I'm like, man, I kind of feel sorry for them. I hope this works out because that job description was challenging.
Well, kind of a related question. How did you evaluate whether a potential employer truly understood and valued the role of a major gift officer during the interview process?
Yeah. So when they asked me, when the questions focused more on relationship building and collaboration and not just on tell me about the largest gift you've raised. Because when I was asked that question, which I mean, it's a pretty standard question, tell me about the largest gift you raised, I would always start with, let me be clear, when you hit a certain gift level, it is a collaborative approach. And it is the CEO is involved, program officer is involved. I, at that point, almost become a behind the scenes orchestrator of making sure that the ask goes smooth, that I am not, it's not just me doing the work. And there was one job description for a role that I interviewed for and then withdrew because I accepted this role, where the job description said something along the lines of like the first sentence is like, you will be building relationships. And I was like, that's perfect. Like, that is exactly like, you will be building relationships. You will be. And so that to me, I was like, they get it. They get it. And so I think that it's important. It's little word changes, but I think it's important to pay attention to those because words matter.
As you had these interviews, were there any recurring red flags that you found in job postings or interviews that you would advise other fundraisers to watch out for?
Um, yeah, I think for me, red flags would include anything that says like you're gonna be responsible for raising X amount of money in a very short time. And for me, that short time is like less than a year. Because that first year, you're building relationships, you're evaluating your own portfolio, trying to figure out, what is what within the organization, understanding how the theory of change works, just understanding the organization. So anything that is within a year, anything that says fast paced or we're a family or we're looking for somebody who doesn't take no for an answer or like things like that. I'm like, because I wish there was one. I wish I could remember exactly what it said, but it was something along those lines of like, you don't take no for an answer, or you figure out a way to make like it was just very interesting. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not. So pay attention to that. And I will also say, look at their values. And when you're interviewing with them, ask how their values show up in their work day to day. Because I think that that's important because I think a lot
Hmm,
of times
that's
in the nonprofit sector, we can say things like, we value inclusivity and diverse thought and compassion. Then when an employee has a different way of thinking project or a problem, how do you embrace that value that you say you have in the day-to-day work? And I think organizations kind of struggle with that sometimes.
Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Fundraising can be hard work, and it can be hard to mentally get into the place you need to be in order to see new opportunities. Everyone struggles with it. We are like the fish in the fishbowl who just can't see the water they're swimming in. That's when having outside expertise comes in handy. For 25 years, I've been helping nonprofits analyze their challenges, discover new ways forward, and develop clear plans that lead to greater fundraising revenues. Now I am available to help your organization develop the abundant vision it needs to inspire new levels of philanthropy at your nonprofit as well. Check out abundantvision.net to start your journey toward greater fundraising success today. Now, back to the show. Now, you mentioned earlier that an organization describing itself as a family is a red flag for you. What's the problem with that?
Um, I have a family, and I know that my family would never fire me. I know they would never fire me if I didn't do something right or if I did something wrong. They would not fire me. They do not me for my day-to-day existence. And like I understand like you want to have a good working environment, but to say that you are a family is overstretching. And I do think it is important you can have close relationships with those people that you work with, but you also need to set boundaries. And let me tell you, like, so when I lost my job in 2023, didn't reach out. They were former colleagues, and all of a sudden I became like the pariah.
Mm,
And so I'm like, I think my family would have reached out. Like, you know what I mean? Like if I and they did. So like I just think you just have to have that understanding when you go through a job transition that you sort of realize like, okay, these people weren't really my friends. They because they're not reaching out to me now that I'm not a colleague. And that was sad, but it was a good lesson to
right.
learn.
Yeah, that's especially true. It's especially true if you managed people.
Yes. Yes. You have to keep I mean, you can I love the person that I manage right now in this role. She's fabulous, she's smart, she's great. But like I know there's going to be times where she's going to probably not like me because I'm going to ask her to do something that she doesn't want to do or that she doesn't agree with. But that's the job. And she may say things that I don't agree with, but I let her go ahead and do it because I'm like, we'll see what happens. Like, let's just do it.
Now, back to your job search. What were your priorities? What were you looking for in a job?
So the first thing was mission. I have stayed in either higher education or K-12 education advocacy and policy work for almost my entire career. I mean, I've had a few stints in workforce development, which was kind of related, and then at like a local community organization. But for the most part, education is, as a first generation college graduate, super important to me. And the second thing that I looked for was values. I wanted to work for a place that aligned with my values. And then I wanted to work for not only my direct boss, but a CEO that had a strong vision and also understood that, you know what, I know I need to be a fundraiser, but it's not my favorite thing to do. You know, like they were self-aware enough to know like I know I need to fundraise. I also know that's not my subject matter expertise. Like so I think having that vulnerability
Mm,
in that
mhm.
relationship with not only the CEO but whoever you're directly reporting to, and sometimes it could be that same person, was super important to me. And I think I have found that here. I think it's, we can have these conversations and I can share data and be like, this is a challenge or this is what we need to do to address this. And I've been in roles where that was not the case.
I think about some of our listening audience. Maybe they're getting to the end of their time at an organization. Maybe they're feeling burnt out a bit or undervalued. What advice would you give to people like that may be ready to move but are feeling hesitant?
Start looking. I mean, if you think that you are ready to move, even if you feel hesitant, start looking now and start putting feelers out there with your network because a job search now can take 6 months. Easy. 6 months easy. It could take a year. Like I know people that have been looking for a job for over a year in this field. And so if
Wow.
you are even thinking about it, start start looking because what you don't want to happen, and I think we've all been there where it's going to be fine. I'm going to push through. It's going to be fine. I'm going to push through. And then 6 months later, you're like, okay, it's not fine. I need to start looking. Then just realize you're going to another 6 months of probably looking. And so, again, it's not your mom's job search anymore. You're going to have to, I sound ridiculous saying that, but you are going to have to um, realize that it's a long game. And there's lots of candidates out there right now, especially with everything going on in the federal space. It's a crowded field.
I'm curious, being as public as you were about your search, did it lead to any job leads or job offers that you didn't look, but people just came to you and said, hey, here's something you should consider?
I definitely had a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I thought of you for this. I thought of you for that." I I don't think I wouldn't say that anything like came from LinkedIn or anything specific, but I will say that I did have a lot of people like reaching out with options, but I admit I was picky. I was so picky. You hear the people who apply for hundreds of jobs, and I was the person that applied for, I think the first time I applied for like over 6 months, maybe 60 jobs over 6 months, maybe. I can't remember. I have a spreadsheet, but I haven't looked at it in a while. And this last time, I think I applied for like I was very, very picky. And there's a lot of jobs out there, but I just didn't. I did not want to jump into another mess. And so I was very smart.
I'm curious, having jumped into a mess, were there any learnings that you took away from the jumping into the mess?
Yeah, I think I should have asked deeper, more probing questions during the interview process.
That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.